Hi, and welcome back to Wicked Wands Tarot. My name is Carmen, and today I'm finally delivering on my promise to tell you about all of the tarot and oracle decks that I have. You probably see me use the majority of these, but there are some that I don't really use on camera, and some that, I don't know, don't always necessarily apply. So I actually wrote down all of the names to make sure I've got it right. And if there are any questions, please feel free to comment and I'll do my best to be timely and respond to those for you. But in general, I have purchased from local stores whenever possible. And then every once in a while, we'll probably check out Etsy or Amazon for cards, just so that you know. All right, the first one I'm going to tell you about is the Dark Goddess Oracle. This one I love because it is based on mythological, or even in some cases, I think, based loosely on real people, but it is a goddess that has some sort of shortcoming tied to advice. I do think this is one of those oracle decks where it makes sense to leverage the book more often. I'm sure those of you that have seen me use this know that I will read from it because it does tend to give you quite a lot of information. And I really do like the foresight or the advice that they provide with each card. So that's one where I don't pack away the book on this one. All right, and then we also have the Angels Abundance Oracle. This one is definitely focused more on financial things. We've got visualize abundance in all forms as an example for you. I do like the artwork on it, and I do feel like it's super appropriate when there are career questions. I do feel like in some cases it's a little bit too specific for general readings, which is why I don't use it as much for the general readings. And then you've probably seen me use the situations deck over and over again. This one has some pretty easy to use cards in terms of, like, there's not a lot of need to interpret. But I would say this is a good example of why it's smart to use more than one deck when you're trying to do a reading. I do always think it's easier to read for others than to read for yourself. But when you use multiple types of decks and, maybe switch between tarot and oracle, you can have a little bit more chance that there's going to be duplication or repetition of a particular message. So it kind of makes it more clear for you, right? So the next one is the Fairy Godmother Oracle. I love that it has this gold trim on the side. And then the artwork I think is really beautiful as well. These are a little bit more simple, and again, like the other one, pretty easy to read without needing to keep the book handy. And then I've got the Energy Oracle. This one, I really like this one because there's both a little bit of clear-cut cards like this anxiety card or indecision. But then there's also some that are a little bit more elevated, like this Temple Path, where maybe at least initially, where the book might come in handy because the Temple Path is talking about your calling. So what I like then is this is maybe a good option for people that are kind of intermediary because it'll test you without it requiring you to use that book like every time you're trying to do a reading. We've got the Earth and Bone Oracle. Again, I'm a sucker for the artwork. Also do love that this is primarily skeletons. Little bit of a darker vibe. But even though it is kind of, a darker theme, there's also a lot of hope in this deck. So I feel like it's really good for people that are maybe like kind of coming out of a difficult time. All right, and then we've got the Love Tarot. If I can reach it. those of you that have seen me use this deck, you probably have heard me say, I kind of hate that this is called a tarot because this is an oracle deck. This doesn't have, you know, Queen of Wands, Queen of Swords, King of Cups, any of that. But again, benefit to oracle cards. You don't really need to have the book. I don't even know if there is one for this, to be honest, because it just says everything right on the deck or on the card for you. And this is good when you need to understand better what the feelings and emotions are with somebody that you might be at a distance from. So we've got the signs of the times. And I should have said this earlier, Angels Abundance Oracle and Signs of the Times. I was gifted these decks by Joanna, so thank you to her. But this one, you probably see me use this more often than some of the other oracle decks because I really do find it to be kind of like varied in its messages. So if I am looking to clarify a general message, it really does kind of help because I don't have to necessarily choose, is this for a love situation or is this for a career situation? There's a little bit more of a spectrum there. All right, it's so hard for me not to just like automatically start shuffling these. So this is the Isis Oracle. I love the back of the cards, and then also really good appropriate art in my opinion. But this is definitely one of those that I would say is best to use with a book being, you know, able to access easily. I also feel like these are more personal messages. So you probably don't see me use them as much with the general readings. Thank you to Tiana for donating it, by the way. But this is a really lovely deck that helps to clarify like what might be a good focus for somebody on their spiritual journey. All right, and then we've got the Tarot. Love the red on the side. And this one, if you've seen me use it, I don't really read this in the reverse, which is a little unusual for me, but it's partly because of how they include the prose or poetry. Poetry. Sorry. On the cards themselves. It just kind of lends itself to reading in the upright only. But again, beautiful artwork. And if you know me, you know that Poe is my favorite author. So thank you to Alyssa for convincing me this was the deck I needed to get when I was at a store a couple months back. All right. I'm trying to remember what was the one. I can picture it, but I don't know if I remember the name of it. There's one other one that I almost bought instead. It has kind of like a, see you guys? I want to keep shuffling them. It had kind of a fairy vibe. All right, so this is the Golden Lenormand. I do feel like if you have, you know, at least 3, 4 tarot decks and you're starting to get a little bit more expansive or wanting to try, you know, oracle decks, whatever it is, I think Lenormand's really great. It's also really helpful to have the book, I think, for Lenormand because sometimes when you're combining things, when you're reading 2 cards together, you might be a little bit surprised at what the interpretation is. But I also feel like a lot of people end up kind of being a block for themselves when it comes to reading cards because they feel like they have to like memorize the entire booklet that comes with it, as opposed to leveraging that as a guide and just kind of seeing what they feel. All right, so this is the Fairy Lenormand. And I love the fairies in this deck, but it's more of like a, I don't know, like digital art. So it feels a little bit more modern while also feeling kind of like, I don't know, medieval because of the fairies. So I kind of like that. It's like fusion. But again, with Lenormand, it's nice to have some familiarity with the book, especially for cards like the Tower. The Tower in the Lenormand is not the same as the Tower in the Tarot. So that's one thing to, you know, kind of keep in mind. All right, the next one we have is the Beginner's Tarot. This one you may have heard me recommend for those that are just starting out with tarot, because it does give you quite a lot of information on the card itself in terms of what sign it correlates to and what the meanings are in both upright and reverse. So I do think it's one of the better ones to start your collection with. In case anybody's wondering, I'm not getting paid by anybody here. Okay, these are just the things that I've bought or been given. All right, so this is the Pulp Tarot. It's probably one of my favorites, to be honest. I love this style of art. It's kind of inspired me, to be honest. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do, because at some point I would like to have my own tarot deck. I think I'll start with an oracle deck, so I'll keep you posted on that. But I just love, like, I think they took a gun out of her hand and put the pentacle in it, and I think that kind of stuff is really creative. But I also feel like it's important to have some decks that will vary, you know, because this is not aligned super closely with the original artwork that you see in, like, the Rider-Waite, for example. And that can help you kind of clarify a message. I would say the same is true of the Egyptian tarot. For example, let's see. Well, this is a good example of it. So this is the Justice card, and I would say this has a little bit more of a vengeance vibe to it, with, you know, sword drawn like that, because it's up in the air, right? And I feel like in a lot of the other cards that I have with the Justice, it's more about finding a fair resolution, and this one always, for me, seems to scream a little bit more so you will get what you deserve. Just kind of like, okay. But this Egyptian tarot also has my favorite card in all the lands, just because of, like, how they chose to interpret the Queen of Swords. I don't know. It's the combination of, I'm smart enough to know, like, I can leverage my discernment and figure out if it makes sense to ask somebody to, like, sit down next to me, but I'm also all about the truth, right? And I will cut you off, right? So I feel like it's a really great interpretation of the Queen of Swords. All right, the next one that I have is the Tattoo Tarot. I love the art on this one. You're going to hear me say that over and over again. But it's very expressive, and I feel another one of those that is a bit of a departure. So for most decks, you would have a woman that looks like she's taming a lion, whereas here we have the lion literally has the woman in his mouth. So I don't know, just fun interpretations or variations on the same theme, right? And then this is the Marigold Tarot. Definitely a departure from the normal art that you will see. I'm trying to, so this is the Six of Wands, for example. This, for me, is more like a collective or a group effort that's been successful because of the way that, what would that be, a hexagon? Because of the way the wands are on the card, versus in a regular Six of Wands, it's more about, like, one person having success because they're on the horseback, everyone's looking at them. Let's see if I can find it. It's the Ten of Cups. That's definitely a departure. But of course, it's got skeletons, so I'm going to love this no matter what, right? It's going to be the last one, you guys. Just watch. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I cannot think. Maybe the Ghost Tarot has something kind of similar. If I recall, it might be like death on the Ten of Cups and the Ghost Tarot. So those two, this one and that one, are probably on the same level as far as kind of strange Ten of Cups, but skulls and nooses. It's sometimes interesting to try to read that in a way that is uplifting, because the Ten of Cups is a happy card. But for me, generally, when I get that card, how I see it is somebody who has found happiness where maybe they were expecting things to end, or somebody that feels like they don't have to keep doing what everyone else expects of them. There I am shuffling again. This is the Meta Muse. So M-E-T-A space M-U-S-E, just because that one's kind of weird. This one has, I believe, like collage art, and it's really kind of along the lines of the Pulp Tarot, but I love how they used color, and they still reference, like this is very similar to the Rider-Waite Devil card. Here's what I was saying about like justice doesn't necessarily look quite as vengeful as the one in the Egyptian tarot. That one's a beautiful one as well. I would just comment that with the Meta Muse, don't let the use of princess and prince cause you too much grief. It's just replacing page and knight, right? So this is the Morgan Greer. I really like this one because it makes me think of like the movies that I grew up watching when I was a kid. Kind of like the, I don't know, like 80s or 70s, even kind of like artistry and what's the word? I'm like kind of like cartoon thing. I'm trying to think. There's this one really weird movie that this reminds me of with aliens. I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember that. If you know what I'm talking about, you go ahead and you let me know. But definitely like a lot of blue themes. This is, of course, the Rider-Waite. I would say this is a natural for anybody that is just starting out with tarot, because this is like basically this is the same thing as Latin for language. So much is based on Latin. So much is based on the Rider-Waite. Interesting to note, most people don't realize that a lot of imagery in the Rider-Waite is based on themes or symbols from Roman Catholicism. All right, so then this is from the lovely Peggy. We've got the Inspired by Frida deck. This is really good for creative people. It'll help you kind of zero in on what kind of focus you might need to take if you are looking to, you know, do right by the kind of achievements you're hoping to have from a more creative standpoint. Again, probably a little bit more appropriate in my experience for personal readings versus general readings. This is the Mystical Cat. Thank you to Erin. I love anything cat-based, if you hadn't figured out from my tattoos or my necklace. But this one, again, is a little bit of a departure from some of the art that you would find in the Rider-Waite. And I like it for that. There's a definite personality to this deck, and I do feel like the person who created this art was very familiar with cats. Here's the demon cat, which would be the devil, for example. So if you're a fan of felines, then I definitely recommend it. All right, this is the Character Oracle, one of my newer decks. And I like it because it gives some attributes that aren't necessarily as prominent or easy to find within the tarot or even some of my oracle decks. So it can help, you know, identify what kind of individual we're talking about. I like using it in general readings, but I do worry that it could be a little bit too limiting or restrictive, because with general readings, obviously there could be a lot of variations in terms of what kind of person you're dealing with. So I might kind of lean towards using that more so with personal readings. But we also have the Everyday Witch Tarot, obviously a mini. And again, a little bit of variation here in terms of the artwork. And I love it because it's, of course, witch themed. I kind of wish that I'd gotten the larger version of that, but I'm still okay with it. I really do like the little ones as well. I also have the Wild Unknown, and I actually kind of just found this one today. I don't think you've seen me use it, at least not for a while. You would have in my old readings if you watched them when I was still doing pre-recorded more often. But I think I neglected to unpack it because if you can tell, there's one that's kind of warped. It's probably Dr. Pepper, you guys. But let's see if we can get back in the rotation, shall we? And then I've got the Steampunk Tarot, another mini. And this one, again, has some departure in terms of details that they include on the cards themselves. But I also feel like they make a lot of sense, and it's kind of like a charming perspective or charming visualization of the themes that you would find in tarot cards. And then, of course, I have the mini Rider-Waite little guy. These are great if you would like to be able to take tarot with you pretty easily. I just would encourage you to wrap in like a cloth or something to protect the cards. All right, and then we've got, this is the Path of Shadows Oracle. This is really good for Dark Night of the Soul type energy or trying to understand what is holding somebody back. I do think there are a few typos in here, so be careful there. But it's also got some really straightforward information, and I feel is a really good add to any reading, honestly. All right, and then we've got the Kipper. I was really excited to get this one when I got it a couple years ago. I love the silver along the side. It is quite unique, and I think I've said a few times, this one can be a little bit more like brutal or direct with some of its messaging. I do like that this ties nicely to the Lenormand because imprisonment, we've got a little bit of a little mouse or a rat on there, right? And in the Lenormand, that implies loss or theft. So it goes kind of hand in hand with that. But we also have, I don't know, some, I like the kind of like charming artistry or art in this as well. This is the Romance Angels Oracle. And I see this on a lot of tarot channels. I think it's a really good one to use when you're maybe a little bit more focused on love readings. The one thing I would say is try not to let the cards that you pull from this deck be too narrow-minded. I think there are times where there's a more expansive understanding or like interpretation. The one in particular I'm thinking of is Retreat. For a lot of people, that might mean, oh, you know, you should probably just give up on this love altogether. When in some situations, I see that card as two people retreating from the world together. Sometimes I see that as two people that just need a little bit of a breather, or maybe they just need to sleep on it and talk about this subject tomorrow. So just like make sure you're not looking too closely or limiting the interpretations. Oops. This is the Gilded Reverie, which is an extended Lenormand. So I love it. For example, let's see if we can get one. Oh, well, this would be example. So we've got two number 12s in this deck. One of them is there's the mouse I was talking about. One of them is, yeah, there it is. A lighter vibe to it with, what are these, cardinals? And with the owls at night, one has a little bit of a darker interpretation. So even though they're both number 12, even though they're both talking about birds, and this is talking about communication, I often see the darker version of it as gossip or things that people are saying and they're hoping nobody will know it came from them, that kind of thing, right? But we also have additions to the Lenormand with things like the magnifying glass, number 44. I believe 36 is where it cuts off for the Lenormand, so anything above 36 would be an addition. But you probably see me use this fairly often. I do really think that it is helpful and pretty clear. All right, so The next one would be the Santa Muerte. And if I'm honest, I have the Oracle version of this as well, like the corresponding, the Santa Muerte Oracle. I just don't use it because it freaks me out. I bought it before I knew that the backs of the cards, if you line them up correctly, they make an Ouija board. I'm not down with that. So it kind of freaks me out. So I don't have that out there or out here, and I did not count it. Just letting you know. That being said, I do really like that deck as far as the content that's not on the backs of the card. And I would say it's one of those oracle decks where I do think you need to have the book in order to read it. The tarot, on the other hand, the Santa Muerte Tarot, I would say very easy to read and has a lot of the same general themes you would find in the Rider-Waite, but as you can see, maybe a little bit more like Latino vibe. I don't know. What they call them? Tarjetas? I don't know. Maybe they call it tarot. You guys tell me. But I love skeletons, so I was all about it from the very beginning. And I also feel like this has some, I don't know, artwork that kind of invokes somewhat unique interpretations. So, highly recommend. All right, this is the Black Tarot. Definitely a darker theme. And to be honest, I tend to choose this when I'm dealing with situations or individuals that might be particularly mysterious or difficult to perceive what they're feeling. I really like this deck because in part it's really nice to shuffle, but also because the artwork differs just enough to have kind of a unique message. And then because I'm obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe, I also have the Edgar Allan Poe Tarot. So I have the Poe Tarot and the Edgar Allan Poe Tarot. This one has more like color illustrations. I probably do prefer the illustrations in the Poe Tarot versus the Edgar Allan Poe Tarot, but this one has its own magic. I really do appreciate how true they are to the books, or I should say the literature itself, in terms of carrying through some of those concepts or images from what Edgar Allan Poe has written. So if you're a fan, you'd probably like it too. All right. This is the Nightmare Before Christmas. Cute design on the back. And then the art obviously is going to be a winner, because if you like the movie, you're going to like how they set things up, right? The fact that they chose her as the Eight of Needles, which is the Eight of Swords. There are a lot of decks that they've made based off movies, and I feel like there's a lot to be said for being able to kind of like reference what happens in a movie when you're using a tarot deck like that. This one, thank you to Tiana, by the way, for donating that, and then also the Hocus Pocus. We've got, there's like a wealth of information beyond what's just on the card, because if you know what's going on in the movie with the scenes that they're using to depict each card, it really does help you, I think, put together a clearer story. So those are kind of fun. All right, and then this is the Golden Art Nouveau. I would call this one of the more elevated ones. I also really like that it has like gold. I don't know, what do you call that? Holographic. But more of a traditional rendering in terms of what you would normally see on the cards, with a little bit of originality, right? And then we've got the Bianco Nero, if I can get it. This one is, I would say also kind of a mix of original, but like this is pretty accurate in terms of judgment, Knight of Pentacles. But then you have ones that are a little bit more, I don't know if I should show that one, a little bit more unique. Like, good example. This Nine of Cups has a little bit more personality to it than just the dude sitting with a bunch of cups behind him, right? There's, I don't know, a little bit of a hermit vibe with this guy, or a little bit of a troll vibe. I don't know. All right, this next one is... Okay, so this one I call the Classic Tarot, but it's kind of oddly named. I looked it up today. What did I find? If you Google Smoostart, S-M-O-O-S-T-A-R-T, holographic Classic Tarot, you will find this. But I think even if you just look up holographic and Classic Tarot, you will probably find it. But this one I really do like. It's got the more traditional artwork, but obviously the holographic element kind of adds to it. And then I would also say I generally refer to this as the noisy tarot because, well, here, let me show you. Because when I shuffle it, it is, I think they can hear it in the next county. Yeah. They are slippery, so I don't recommend this deck for people that want to bring it with them, like outside the home. This is a domestic tarot. This is the Masonic Tarot. This is, I think, one of the more unique decks that I own, and sometimes I shy away from it because, well, in part because, I guess I'll be honest, I probably like the artwork the least on this deck. I really hope that doesn't offend anyone, because that's not what I'm trying to go for. But what I really like about it is that it has like symbology that not every other deck has, because of the link to the Masons. So I'm trying to find a good example. Well, so like the compass, for example. And then I think they have like strength. Yeah, so like obviously there's going to be a little bit of a, I don't know, kind of variation because of some of the symbols that you find on here. And I would say if you purchase this deck, I would look through the book and I would familiarize myself with some of those Mason symbols. Granted, within the book you will find the majority of that anyways, if not all of it. But it's a little bit more advanced, I would say, so I wouldn't recommend it for like a first tarot deck because you want to have a good understanding of the Rider-Waite before you buy a deck like this. Any of the decks that have deviation from cups, swords, wands, pentacles, I would put that as like second tier or intermediate because you want to have a good understanding of the regular version before you move up, right? I would put the Masonic at like tier 2 or tier 3 even, because it does, I think, require a little bit more in terms of wanting to do a little bit of research or understanding symbols. This is the Spiritual AF deck, and I would say it is absolutely delightful. One of the things that I like about this is, again, you don't really need to have anything to explain it to you. In fact, I don't really do this, but on the back, it gives you the actual, like, more fleshed out, like, detailed interpretation. I just usually read the front, right? But these are going to be very direct, kind of blunt messages for you. This is the Zodiac fortune telling cards. Kind of old school, and I love that about them. They have on each card 4 messages, right around the outside or the margins, And then they all have the same image in the middle. But what's kind of cool is they also have a wish answer, yes or no, at the top, the number of the card, and then they have the lucky number. So I really like that. I don't know. I feel like it's not one of the first things I would recommend adding to somebody's collection. But let's say you have 10 decks, a mix of tarot and oracle. This would be a nice add at that point, because for me, I feel like it's kind of like icing on the cake or good advice at the end of a message. All right, this is the Untold Messages of the Heart. And I have had this one for quite a while. I really do like the kinds of messages that they have on here, as well as at the top they have kind of like the theme, right? Sadness. I feel like I've lost you and I'm not coping well with it. So it, again, does not require a book to understand what's going on. And it's really good for those like no contact situations that seem to be, I would say, the motivation for most people trying to utilize tarot. Then we've got the Hidden Truth Oracle. This is volume 1. Doesn't really say it on there, but it is the first one. And then I also have the second volume. I do think there is value in having both of these. The messages are different enough. And the second one has a divine feminine, divine masculine focus, which is kind of fun. And then I also have the Voyage of the Soul Oracle. This one, I would say, has definitely surpassed my expectations. I think this has more value in personal readings, but still has quite a lot of value in general readings as well, in part because they have like a subject line and then they have like the meat, right? Like the 5 or 6 words that kind of clarify joy or polarity, whatever it is. But I also feel like the way that they choose to add an image or a visual to these, it's really effective in my mind. Like, can't you just taste the pumpkin spice latte? I don't drink coffee, but I really like this. I think this would be a good ad for most people because it helps you identify your strengths when you're going through a difficult time. Going through a difficult time was a really good segue to the Divine Time Oracle. I will probably never use this on a general reading because I do feel like this is highly specific and will be like different answers for different people. But I also feel like one thing that I would say about those of you that like to get personal readings, when you ask about when something is going to happen, remember what you're getting is a screenshot of energy at that moment, right? And we have free will. There are things that change. So sometimes you get an answer, like stay positive about it, that is less precise than you will want. And that's okay. You can be frustrated. I've been frustrated myself before, right? But I think what this deck kind of helps to teach is that we do have to get less focused on knowing exactly when something's going to happen so that we can better understand the things that are happening around us while we are focused on something else, right? Stop and smell the roses kind of vibe. This is the Gold Foil Tarot. Pretty easy to remember the name of this one because it's super gold. Also like the reflective, or I don't know, can we call that holographic? It doesn't really, I mean, it's probably called gold foil for a reason, right, Carmen? Very traditional in terms of its artwork, but it has kind of like a different vibe to it because of, I don't know, it's almost like a watercolor. Like, I don't know how well you saw that last one. I don't know if you can see the clouds. But I think it's beautiful. And then we've got this Jack-o'-lantern tarot. I really like the difference that they have in some of these depictions because it does differ slightly from what you might expect in the Rider-Waite. Trying to find another example. Like, the Magician's cool. I mean, he's literally like creating I don't know, a skeleton, or a skull, I guess I should say. But one thing I will caution you with regards to the Jack-o'-lantern tarot is I I do my best. Like, it's a rule in my head. Like, I don't want to look at this when it falls down, because if I'm trying to figure out how to pick it up, I don't like being influenced by the fact that this pumpkin, I know then which is upright and which is reverse. So if you get a deck where you can tell when it lands on the table whether or not you should flip it this way for it to be upright, or whether or not you should flip it like that, first of all, you should have some sort of common way of flipping cards or how you read them, right? But I would say if you can tell the difference, then don't look. So this is a perfect example too, because Eight of Cups is a card that is oftentimes positive if you're walking away from difficult things. But sometimes you want that Eight of Cups in the reverse because you want somebody to be coming back around. So it's, I think, in our best interest to not try to guide that reading, right? All right, this is the Ghost Tarot, probably one of the first decks I got, actually. And I do like that the depictions are like literally of ghosts. Ooh, this is the one I was talking about earlier. Remember I was saying the Marigold Tarot had kind of like a weird interpretation of the Ten of Cups? Here we have the Ten of Cups for the Ghost Tarot, and it is indeed looking a lot like Death with his scythe. It's a different interpretation, so I like these because they're going to, I think, kind of call you out when you're wanting to find a particular message and ignoring what the actual message is. We can all say that we don't do it, but I know most people, they're looking for what they want to come true, right? And sometimes tarot is more so, or it should be, about addressing the things that maybe you're struggling to accept. This is the Cosmic Woman. I would say for those of you that are planning on doing a tarot channel, thank you to Joanna, by the way, for gifting this. She, I hope she doesn't get offended. I don't use this as much on the general readings, and in part because there are some lady bits that show this deck. So I get a little bit nervous that I'll get in trouble for that. So just a heads up for those of you that might be looking to do your own channel, you probably want to, be a little bit cautious with regards to the nudity on the cards. This is the Modern Goddess, and probably one of the more unique in terms of how they depict or portray each of the cards. Very feminine with the Modern Goddess Oracle, obviously that makes sense, but there's kind of a playfulness to it that I really like. The reason I don't use these as much, thank you again to Joanna, is because it's the biggest deck that I have, and I have kind of small hands. Feel free to make fun of me, but I still try to make sure that I use it at the beginning. I'm just nervous I'm gonna like drop them everywhere. Like this one, which is also quite large. This one is one of Mystic Beauties or Cosmic Royal Families decks, and I really like this. You may notice that I put out more shorts with this particular deck than any other deck, in part because I really do feel like it's easy for people to resonate with these kinds of messages. I think we've all either been an overthinker or we have dealt with one. So I really do like what this adds to a reading. And I think it can be very easily applied to general readings or be quite good for personal. This is one of the newer decks that I have. Thank you to Peggy. I love that it has the gold on the side again, and it's probably one of my favorites to shuffle. I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. I don't know, there's something about the thickness of the card that really makes it like less susceptible to the cards catching and like folding or bending. So I like that. And then beyond that, the art. The art is so amusing and adorable. I love cats, but I also feel like they did justice to the expressions that they put on these cats' faces. So highly recommend and appreciate this deck. And let's see. We're on the last row, you guys. All right, so this is from Tiana. Thank you. I use this a little bit less on the general readings, in part because I don't know when they're going to start being mad at me for swearing. And I don't necessarily want it to like screen grab on the word F. Oh, fuck. But I gotta say, the messaging in this deck is epic. Very good to use when you're dealing with breakups or friendships that are ending, especially if you know that maybe you need to be kind of called out on your own stuff every once in a while. This is the Lightworkers Oracle. I've recently rescued this from my closet, so you probably haven't seen it too much, or maybe you saw it in the early days. Again, I would say this is probably better for personal readings, although I do sometimes like to use it in the general reading as well, because this is very much so focused on the spiritual path and can be a little more focused where it concerns vocation. So it could even tell you, you know, like you should be working in social services, for example. All right, this is the Tarot Familiars. Also, one of the earlier decks that I acquired, I had to because unicorns and cats, and yeah, I can deal with the owls. But definitely a departure from the original artwork that you have in the Rider-Waite. However, one thing I would say is I like decks like this more for clarification purposes, because when we get to cards like the Five of Swords or like the Four of Cups, you just have the swords and the cups. So I think maybe it's better to reinforce or validate versus outright identify what we're looking at, right? This is the Everyday Tarot. I love this deck. I've also had this one for quite a while. Very unique approach to the same kind of themes you would see within the Rider-Waite. So I like that it's kind of playful. And I'm trying to think of how we would identify this style. Is it like Art Deco? I don't know. But I also feel like the size is quite good if you're looking to take your tarot deck with you. And I like that it's kind of boxy instead of like more upright, if that makes sense. All right, this is the Tarot de la Nuit. I never really know if I'm saying that right, but I would also say this is one of my favorites in terms of the size, and the artwork is a departure and a little bit more moody, which I appreciate, especially this time of year. And I feel like it is a little bit more, I guess I would say flashy, right? With the artwork, and definitely more feminine. All right, so this is the Crow Tarot. Definitely can see how it's based on the original Rider-Waite themes, but of course we're gonna have a crow version of it. And I do really, I don't know if this is like technically like a paper mache kind of style, but I do like that it is a departure from some of the other styles of art that I have. All right, this is the Gypsy Oracle, and this one is right up there with the Kipper in terms of being a bit unique and having some a little bit more direct, or what I sometimes call brutal messaging on here, but I really do feel like it's a good add to anybody's collection. Probably after, like, you know, you've gotten to like the 10, 11, 12 mark. This is from Christina. Gotta love her. She also loves the Golden Girls, and I love the art on here. Even though it's a little bit more simple, you can absolutely tell that it's the Golden Girls on here. And the way they depicted, like the Four of Wands, for example, it's probably going to make you smile, even if you're asking some tough questions. So definitely recommend that one. Then we've got another oracle. This is called The Truth Is. This is a larger deck, so probably not the best for those that want to be mobile with their tarot reading. But I do feel like it's very to the point. You don't really need any book to clarify what's going on here, right? It's probably more so focused on romantic connections, and is good when you're having some tension or maybe even questioning if somebody has good intentions. And then we've got the Dragon Oracle. I really like the artwork on this, and I do feel like it helps people identify what needs to be focused on in the near future. I would say I use this more so with regards to like social conflicts or career, and more likely during personal readings. But thank you to Joanna for that one as well. And then, oh, there it goes. I knew one of them was going to fall. And then we've got the Magic 8 Ball. This one is a yes-no deck, but it also has kind of like that Divine Timing deck. Has some of them that are dismissive, right? Ask again later. This is frustrating for many, I think, when they get that kind of an answer, but I think it should actually be hopeful. When you get an answer like ask again later, this implies that whoever you're asking about, or whatever situation you're asking about, there is change in motion, and we don't know where it's going to land yet. Is somebody healing and they're about to be what you were hoping they would be? Is somebody making a decision and thinking, maybe you're perfect for the job? These are opportunities for us to be patient and trust in the universe versus always having to know the answer, right? A little bit of faith. And then, oh, we're going to end on that one actually. This is the Tarot of the Nile. Oh, that's interesting. I just like flipped open to that, and it happens to be the one that is flipped over the wrong way. That's weird. So King of Swords might be an important message for somebody out there. This is about somebody who's ready to tell some truth, or somebody who is an expert in their field. But I would also call this a good one to pursue if you want some kind of varied artwork in your collection. I love the difference in like the tone, kind of like rich. I mean, for me, I think of like Mediterranean colors but I don't know if that's fair. And then I do also like the back of it. Thank you to Peggy for this one. All right, and then the last one I will share with you is actually the first one I ever got in my entire life. So this is the Green Witch Tarot. And I do believe there's an oracle. I should maybe get that. But you can kind of tell that I've had this one longer than the others just based on how the deck is starting to, you know, kind of curve. But I'll be honest, I adore this, and it's very special to me. Like, I don't really want anybody else to touch it anymore, to be honest. I don't really use it in the general readings or in personal readings very often because it is that special to me. But I would also comment that it was probably not the best for me to get this as my first deck, much as I love it, because I did have to depend on the book quite heavily initially because I didn't really know what a Thames was. Right? This is the Nine of Swords. Love the artwork, but it took a while to get past some of the words, or like how they chose to title the cards. This is the Lady and the Lord, so that would be the Lovers. I think it's best, like I said earlier, to start with something like the Rider-Waite and then work up to something that changes the name of those key elements. so that you can better understand what's going on without the use of a book. But I would also say that there is something so magical about the artwork in this deck. I think that's part of why I treasure it. There is, for me, a lot that emanates from the art in this deck to really help understand, you know, what you're talking about or who you're trying to understand. And while it does have a lot of common themes with the Rider-Waite, it's a different take. Like the fact that this is somebody sitting outside in the cold and everybody's at a fire pit behind them. There's no church in this one, right? So again, a good addition, but maybe not what you should do for your very first deck, right? All right, you guys, I finally did it. That's my entire collection. I hope you appreciated that, and I hope you maybe even figured out something that you want to add to your collection. Thank you to the dude for inspiring me to do this, and hopefully not for too much longer will I have to go before adding another one. All right, love you guys. Have a great rest of your day.